Hello, everyone. Today's topic, as was asked before, is 1816, the year without a summer. I keep saying anyone who watches maple syrup history on a kind of regular basis, who has been here the whole semester, we're getting very much closer to modern times. Already next week, we will be talking about the 20th century. September 18th, a week from today, we will be talking about the 1900 Galveston hurricane in Texas, of course. And the following day, that same week, 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So we're moving towards modernity. Today is September 11th. Anyone want to share a 9/11 story from their life? I asked Alexander where he was. He said he was 4 years old, Fayetteville, Arkansas. Anyone? Where were you 22 years ago? What was going on?
I had just moved to Minnesota. Literally just moved, and I don't read the news, and my husband likes to mock me and make up news stories to see if I'm not.
So you thought it was fake?
Stupid. So he was in China, and he said the US has been attacked. I'm like, really funny, it's early here, don't mess with me. He's like, turn on the TV. So I turned on the TV, and sure enough, there are the burning Twin Towers. The other day I had friends who died in the Twin Towers. My husband was stranded in China for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Right out. I literally just moved to Minnesota. And the act of kindness from his boss, it was like a big deal in this company, he called me up and he said, I know you just went. This is hard work here for you. So out of the horror worth of kindnesses.
Yeah.
That's it.
Anyone else?
Phone call early in the morning from friends and on the TV, going to work and pretty much nobody working. Listening to the radio.
See, it's amazing because my wife, her and I are the same age. We were both 14 then, freshmen in high school. But her in Idaho, they watched it all day. I was in high school in Pennsylvania. I didn't find out about it till after the day,
Oh, wow.
after football practice.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm dead serious. So I grew up 2 hours west of New York City. I would never call myself a New Yorker out of respect for New Yorkers. Like I'm not, oh, I'm gonna glam off. I basically I went to. There's times when I would go to New York once a week. Like I would go 40 times a year. So I absolutely know New York much better than any city, any big city in the world, and grew up very close to it. And of course, Shanksville. So New York's over here, and then obviously DC and Shanksville, Pennsylvania was west of us. And I remember still vividly, first of all, like I said, I was 14 years old. I did not know what the Twin Towers were before that day. I had no idea what that was. This is before computers, internet, whatever. I'm not interested in Wall Street finance stuff. I had no idea what the Twin Towers were. The American monuments I knew as just finished 8th grader would be like Statue of Liberty, White House. I didn't know what Twin Towers were. That's number one. But number two, we're in school, and this obviously happened 8:46 Eastern time when school day started. Remember at lunch, someone mentioning something about the Shanksville thing, like a plane had crashed in Pennsylvania. And then it wasn't we had football practice, freshman football. I got picked up after practice. My dad, and then at that point, my dad was really emotional about it. And he explained the whole story in the car ride home, very close, 5 minutes to our house. But then we, of course, spent the rest of the night, like everyone in America, watching, ABC News nonstop for 7 hours. And at that point, but I just remember one unique experience for me. It wasn't like we were dismissed from school or everyone turned the TV on. Nothing happened. We just continued on. My mom was at the dentist office that was on TV, and everyone that I talked to has the experience of watching it live. That was not. Anyways, may God rest your souls. We will talk about 9/11, 2 classes on 9/11 in this class come semester's end, I believe November. So not just in light of the tragic anniversary of today, but just obviously talk about Catholicism and disasters. I started the class. We're actually having 3 classes on 9/11. I started the class talking about 9/11, right? Yeah.
Since we're mentioning Shanksville, my uncle was squad inmates with Leroy Homer Jr.
Is that one of the guys on the
He
plane?
was the first officer on the grade.
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah.
I know most famously Todd Beamer, the guy, because the Lex role, he got immortalized for that, and I've watched a couple of documentaries about it recently. Yeah, awful stuff, horrifying stuff. What do you say? What do you say? Right? I mean, what do you say? Except just to pray for those poor people. I guess a final note before we move on. It's like I used to ask my grandmother, and my grandmother died, God rest her soul. at age 91, amazing life, but she was 19 when Pearl Harbor happened. And it's like, yeah, like, right, if God willing, me and my wife lived to our 80s, 90s, we'll ask us like, what happened 9/11? I mean, it's our Pearl Harbor. Okay, so anyways, 1816, the year without a summer. I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space, rayless and pathless, and the icy earth swung blind and blackening in the moonless air. Morn came and went, and came and brought no day. That is a poem called Darkness by the famous Lord Byron. And he talks about how, quote, the fowls all went to roost at noon and candles had to be lit as at midnight. Has anyone been to Alaska during the winter months? No. Vice versa, been like, when the sun doesn't rise for 4 months, doesn't set for 4 months. I mean, this is point number one. And we're going to be, by the way, all business today. Just kind of the facts, get the facts done. That's point number one. Like the year without a summer, obviously, it is the experience, the lived experience of this is as if you were in Alaska in January. Now it's not pitch black, but the sun never making it up gives you this kind of like perpetual late twilight, kind of nautical twilight gray feeling.
Is it like in China with all the smog, or like here when we get really, really bad smoke from the fire?
Yeah, okay, great. That I can answer the second, not the first. I've never been in China. I've seen pictures of smog in China. I have no idea to compare it to that. Recently, even like a couple weeks ago, I would say it's darker than that. But that's a good comparison. Yeah, right. When it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and you can actually see rays of the sun kind of poking through, as if like just being blocked by this mass of smoke from the forest fires. I'd say a similar thing. Yeah. Year without a summer, 1816. Summer temperatures in Europe, the coldest on any record between 1766 and 2000. So think about it being the coldest summer in recent recorded history. In a very neat way, both neat as in kind of the 90s, neato, cool, but also neat as in clean, nice connective threads. The only real comparison is our second lecture of this class, the year 536. If you remember, the worst year to be alive. Talked about the Antioch earthquake, and then continued on to talk about the impact of crop failures and that kind of thing. So it's the coldest summer, the worst summer on record from basically the founding of America to Y2K, right? 1766 to 2000. And you have to go really back in the historical memory bank to our second lecture to get anything comparable whatsoever. Now, does anyone know what causes this? These years without a summer, these kind of like massive crop failures. This once more can be fun. Like we're going to talk about 9/11 and talk about 9/11, of course, this awful act of terrorism, human actors, Chernobyl, human actors, nuclear disaster. We're going to talk about, natural disasters like hurricanes. We're going to talk about Mount St. Helens, obviously the kind of resonance for the local PNW here. We have a lecture on Mount St. Helens later. Where does this fall under here? This seems just climatological, based from what? What is the disaster impetus here?
I don't know, but I'm guessing it's natural.
It is natural, 100% natural.
Widespread.
Yep.
Volcano somewhere that they were aware of, or is it
I'm pretty sure, I think the science is not settled on it last I read about it. I think that Krakatoa is one of the primary theories, or another volcano in Southeast Asia or the Philippines.
Tambora. So really quickly, yes. And it's like, why do we have to get our volcanic eruptions in order? Just because truth is good, right? Krakatoa might be arguably more famous, but Krakatoa is 1883. The volcano here that you're saying is up for debate. Okay, so this one, the famous Mount Tambora that has a volcanic explosivity index, VEI. I'll admit I don't know what that means, but just the volcanic Richter scale of 7 that ejects 24 cubic miles of material. Here's the thing that's important for me, I think, just for kind of comparable facts. It's the world's largest volcanic eruption during historic times, really comparable to some, going back to the 2nd millennium BC, comparable to things like, you're really jogging the memory here to like Vesuvius, which covers Pompeii in ash. God rest those people's souls. those poor people mummified immediately from this, right? You're talking about this kind of event.
I'm sorry, so where is the mountain?
In Southeast Asia, the Dutch East Indies, modern day Indonesia. The eruption was the largest, they think, in 13 centuries, 1,300 years. Ryan Alexander, excellent job, because other volcanic eruptions around this time, Mount Tambora explodes April 1815. So a year prior to this year without a summer. Tambora explodes, VEI, again, I'm admitting my full ignorance. I don't know what VEI means. That's very bad though. It's 7. It's very high on the scale of like volcanic intensity. Again, forget the scale, largest volcanic eruption in terms of like displaced material and power in 1,300 years. So enormously powerful. And think about, again, our recent class last week, the Lisbon earthquake, comparing, let's say, a volcanic eruption, this disaster in a volcano, to 9 hydrogen bombs under the ocean, Lisbon earthquake, 1755. Tambora explodes April 1815, does not cause the year without a summer that year. 15 months later, the following summer, Ryan Alexander said, well, scientists are still debating, etc. Well, yeah, there are five other VEI +4 eruptions around this time. So around Tambora, it's a kind of like, if anyone knows, what is K2? What is K2? What's it very near? What's it very close to?
Everest.
Exactly. I am not an alpinist, but I heard K2 is way more challenging. It's actually a much bigger accomplishment to summit K2, which I believe is also the second largest peak in the world, but also extremely difficult technically. Everest gets all the fame because it's the tallest mountain in the world, but they're very close to each other. Think about that. It's not like, oh, lightning only strikes once. Tambora, nothing. Tambora is a 7 amidst 1808, 2 in 1812, 1813, 1814, other volcanic eruptions up to this scale. And this one called the quote, I mean, wow. If you think I'm not lost enough already, how about this name? The 1808 mystery eruption. Well, that's great. That says a lot. The 1808 mystery eruption in the Southwestern Pacific was a VEI 6. So only one like level below Tambora. Historian John D. Post, that's not a real name, has called this quote, the last great subsistence crisis in the Western world. What is John D. Post talking about? Like John D. Rockefeller went into hiding. I don't know, New York Post. Yeah, Post. I'm John Post them. What is the last great subsistence crisis in the Western world?
Potato famine?
It was
This one is. The potato famine comes later on. The potato famine is 3 decades later. I've tried to restrict Catholicism disasters to more kind of climatological. I could have included the Irish potato famine though. In fact, if you remind me, I'll try to remember. I'm doing the cholera outbreak next class, but I might include a note on the potato famine because potato famine is naturally caused. And talk about ravishing it, like the Catholic country, causing all of this. What's the Catholic response? It creates Catholic America with all the Irish immigrants, So this one is larger than that in terms of a subsistence crisis. But I guess we've already kind of answered the question, right? But the idea of this volcanic winter is not just it makes it a colder summer than 240 years. It's the largest explosion. The volcanic ash, the drop in temperature creates these large scale famine events, so to speak. And for us, certainly I am chauvinistic in terms of like, America's the best. I want to focus on North America. I'm North American, sorry, right? So important for us, the climactic impact of this year of 1816 had the greatest effect, yes, in Western Europe, but also New England and Atlantic Canada. So it really affects these United States very, very much. And if you're thinking like, what is going on at this time in American history? Well, 1816, we just successfully beat the British the second time. The War of 1812 has ended in 1815. We're going to be kicking off this quote unquote manifest destiny with a lot of great stuff, like 10 years earlier, Lewis and Clark and exploration, and a lot of awful stuff like Native American removal, Trail of Tears. That's for another class. Manifest destiny, which one? Good and bad at the same time, right? What are we talking about? There's good parts, bad parts. In that good and bad story, America's about to really take off in the 19th century, especially after the Civil War, sea to shining sea, etc. At the start of that whole kind of like journey forward is this climatological Mount Tambora influenced disaster that drops global temperatures, affects crops, and leads to what this historian, John D. Post, calls the last great subsistence crisis in the Western world. The last great, talk about like ultimate supply chains breaking down. How are we literally going to feed people? Subsistence is in crisis, to use the exact words. It's not just, well, the lentils didn't come in too good on the flus this year. Corn is not doing too good in Kansas. Everyone is in kind of famine, drought, awful kind of conditions because of this. How about other places, guys? Marie, you mentioned China. Or in China, there was a massive famine. Floods destroyed the crops that had not been already ravaged by the event itself. The monsoon season was disrupted, resulting in overwhelming floods in the Yangtze Valley. You even see kind of freak events like summer snowfall in China. In Taiwan, which I don't know if anyone, no one has to be told this, Taiwan has a warm climate. But we're going to Taiwan, is wear short sleeves, right? Taiwan has snow in the summer, frost at night. And if you want to talk about double disaster and connecting the next class, we're going to talk about the cholera outbreak in Great Britain specifically, which leads to massive improvements in sanitation in London and Manchester. In India, torrential rainfall and this delayed monsoon season causes an aggravated outbreak of cholera that spreads throughout the Indian subcontinent. And as you know, India being so incredibly population dense and all that, this is, a perfect recipe for disaster. Anyone know what aggravates the food shortages too? And this is the kind of thesis of my class today, because today I'm going to have a formula for you that I'm actually going to read in a second. But if Tambora explodes, that's bad. Volcanic summer, drop in temperature, bad. All these things are bad, fine. And fair enough, obvious enough. What has just happened in Europe that has also caused a lot of food shortages, a lot of problems, a lot of disruptions? Anyone know?
War between France and Britain?
Yeah, the Napoleonic Wars. Right, exactly. No, precisely. So if you're like, what are we talking about? You can really say David Bell is a scholar who wrote a book. I believe the title is called the First Total War. And he talks about how Europe is really at war for 26 years, from 1789, the French Revolution, through Waterloo, 1815. And it's like, Napoleon is crowned, Holy Roman Emperor, crowns himself. We're talking about his relationship with Pope Pius today. Go ahead.
I think it was that Pope Pius VII.
Pius VII.
Did he actually excommunicate Bonaparte?
I don't believe so. I know that Bonaparte signs Pius VII is Pope from 1800 to 1823. So all the way through, he's like Napoleon's Pope, you could say in a certain sense, like perfectly congruent, because Napoleon takes over really in 1799. Pius VII ascends the chair of Peter the next year. And then I believe Napoleon dies in 1821, if I'm not mistaken. He's already exiled by that time to St. Helena, not just Elba, but the second one, down way out of the way. And Pius dies in 1823. So they're actually perfectly congruent, where one guy is, Christ's representative on earth, the other guy is literally the king of the world, you could say. At least before his fateful invasion of Russia in 1812. But Napoleon takes over in 1799, 1804, he's emperor. He's just kicking butt all the way up. From 1804 to 1811, he's just absolutely dominating. Ends the Holy Roman Empire, creates the rivalry between Austria and Prussia, which will culminate in that war of 66, 67, leads to the unification of modern Germany. Unbelievably consequential figure. Napoleon, like we said again, of course, makes this fateful mistake to invade Russia. The country in the winter, in the harsh conditions everyone knows as well, really, stops him. He eventually is exiled to Elba, comes back, goes nuts again, for a while, and then finally they're just like, he's just done. After Waterloo, we're just going to send him away to the middle of nowhere. Pope Pius VII, I don't believe he ever formally excommunicates him. He signs a concordat with him. And this is a great, or Napoleon has a concordat with the church. So in some weird ways, okay, blessed be God forever. Talk about ultimate blasphemy. These Robespierre type guys who are putting the quote goddess of reason in Notre Dame, desecrating the cathedral. if you're a Catholic, like Napoleon's awesome. Napoleon's going to end that. He's going to restore the priesthood. Is that the French revolutionaries are like, we're not going to have peace until every last priest is hung by his entrails or something like that. Like it's just the most anti-religious, diabolical thing of all time, up to that point, arguably. Mass execution of priests, assaulting nuns, whatever. Napoleon sounds great compared to that. So we look at Napoleon like a bad dictator guy, and he certainly was a dictator, and whatever. But he's kind of like, I mean, who do you want to live under? Yeah, liberty, fraternity, equality, where if you're a Catholic, you're dead in the streets and guillotine, everyone getting Robespierre, surprise, surprise. He who lives by the sword dies by it. Robespierre, of course, famously has guillotined himself after killing everyone during that, 1793-94 kind of hot part of the revolution. So Napoleon, no, he's kind of liked by the church in some weird way. We hate this guy, we Catholics, maybe, me speaking as the Pope, if I can be so bold, we hate this guy because he's not humble, he's very arrogant, he's very much, Christ says in, I think it's, Mark chapter 8, verse 35, what profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? This guy seems to not care about anything, just gain the whole world. He's absolutely crazy lustful for power. He'll do whatever. He famously brags like, you can't stop me. I spend 30,000 lives a month. He brags to one of his opponents, like he's just killing everyone. He's lustful. Napoleon's best example, 100%, is Alexander the Great, conquering simply for the purpose of conquering. So Catholics don't like that. But do they like the fact that he kind of restores the faith in France? Absolutely. Do they like the fact that he ends the terror? Definitely. Oh, he's not doing it for the right reasons. People aren't getting killed on the streets anymore. That's pretty good. So there's this weird relationship between Napoleon and the church. Now, I don't think Napoleon's ever going to be canonized. I'd be surprised about that. I'd be surprised if he's a new, Henry IX, or King St. Louis IX, excuse me. I'd be surprised if that happens, but that'd be pretty interesting. But is he just the bad guy compared to Robespierre? He is basically Louis IX. He's basically Joan of Arc compared to the French Revolutionary guys. So I mean, but anyways, that's the answer. Actually, today, here's the formula I have for you. Thank you so much. You jumped ahead perfectly, like in framing it perfectly. This normal class is this: 1 equals ABC. This class formula. Remember my logic class last semester had like a formula for you. It was really cool, and yeah, it was awesome. Like everything I do is just great, Normally, this class is 1 equals ABC. 1, disaster. We talk about disaster, then equals A, perhaps God's chastising us. B, it's definitely providential, or B, it's definitely providential, but is God chastising us or not? I don't know. Or C, maybe it's just this kind of like necessary chance kind of thing that God is letting play out, and we really don't know what's going on. And what we have to, I promise I'll review it. And what we have to do in response to this is not so much speculate big scale, but personally change, do penitential acts. Look at the Black Plague. The Black Plague was 1 equals ABC. 1 is the disaster, and the equal sign A, B, and C are all Catholic reactions. Catholicism Disasters, this whole class. 1, disaster, equals the Catholic reaction is either A, God's chastising us, Sodom and Gomorrah, whatever, being punished for our sins. B, it's definitely providential, but I don't know if he's chastising us. Both those are kind of high level speculation. Or C, maybe it's just happening, but I know I need to take care of I need to do penance. I haven't been to confession in a while. I need to go to the Stations of the Cross, whatever. That's usually the reaction. Today we have 1/1, not just 1. 1 is a disaster, equals ABC. 1/1 equals ABCD. So that's our different. I'm going to put that on the board actually, because it just looks so cool. Normal today. Isn't it so sick? If I just I'm serious, but this is the formula for creating reverse nuclear energy. People are like, that's awesome. It just looks good,
That's a tautological mathematical statement. I mean,
What?
D has to be equal to 1. 1/1 is equal to 1. So ABCD must be equal to ABC.
Well, see, you just proved that I've invented new mathematics.
Plus
You haven't
ABC.
posited any new axioms. Look at the axiom.
Plus ABC.
My mathematics is an axiom.
But ABC
It's
is
a
not
balance.
multiplication. It's 1 is either A or B or C, right?
Guys, everyone told me when I did this that they wouldn't be smart enough to get it, and then you're just proving it. No, it's not.
The way he gets it in is like flying, 5 by 1.
It is not, I love fake pretentious mathematics. This is not mathematical. It's just simply to say that normally, right, we have one disaster only, and then that one disaster engenders 3 Catholic responses, right? Remember again, God is punishing us, definitely B. I don't know if he's punishing us or not. But it's definitely providential. It's definitely from God. And C is just like, I really have no idea, but I need to have personal kind of change of lifestyle. I need to repent, whatever it is. I take things in my, like, think about the flagellants in the Black Plague. They were C. They're like, we're gonna go do something. We're gonna do public reparation. 1/1 is not 1 divided by 1 so much to say like here one disaster trumps the other. During this summer of 1816, no, I don't have a lot of Catholic reaction on this because people were more worried about Napoleon. Like the disaster of Napoleon, or if we're going to go with the Concordat and say that Napoleon is actually a good guy, relatively speaking, you can make that argument compared to the French revolutionaries. I certainly would. I would definitely prefer to be a subject of Napoleon than Robespierre, 100%. So 1/1, 1 cancels 1. It goes over the top of 1. And then now we're dealing with this new 1 that has overridden the old 1. Now it's Napoleon, not just a climatological thing. But once we go through ABC, D comes in that just literally stands in my formula for difference. What is the difference though? So if we're just sitting around chilling and like, got to deal with this disaster, what is the difference of my A, B, and C? Is it a chastisement from God? Maybe not chastisement, but it's, providential, or D, I just got to find personal repentance. What is the difference comparing it to summer of 1816 versus Napoleon? Do Catholics react differently to the disaster of political upheaval versus the disaster of climatological upheaval? So keep this you've all made very clear how much you dislike this mathematical formula. Keep this in mind just as we kind of go along. We're often going to do N, the normal one. We often just talk about one thing. We don't talk about, multiple ones. We just talk about one, but sometimes one overrides the other. So I'm going to get back to that in a second. Let me just finish up more information on the summer of 1816, before I forget, or before we kind of like put that off to the side. But I'm glad, Barb, you answered the question correctly and brought us to the crux of this class, which is this kind of like formula. Because the formula usually, again, is just like, there's one thing we talk about in the Catholic response. And if anyone revisits the maple syrup videos online, you see like, yeah, that's pretty standard. That's what we do. That's what we do. And when we open the class talking about, of course, they have this horrible anniversary of 9/11. 9/11, Chernobyl, they're so important. I dedicate a whole week to them. So for those, we spend the first day, the Monday, on 1, just the disaster facts in the ABC or the ABCD on the second day. Today on these, we do together. What about North America? Remember, I said North America was the place where it was worse, right? In the spring and summer of 1816, a persistent dry fog was observed in parts of the United States. The fog reddened and dimmed the sunlight, such that sunspots are visible with the naked eye. And neither wind nor rain nor driving rain could dispel the fog. It's kind of like massive, creepy fog. It has been called a stratospheric sulfate aerosol veil. SSAV. SAV. Stratospheric sulfate aerosol veil. Comes and just kind of settles down over the top of everything going on anywhere. The hardship that follows from this year without a summer, this drop in global temperatures, Turner, the important point you missed earlier was the coldest winter on record between 1766 and 2000. It's not the cold. Americans are super hardy people. I think would agree. It is once more. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
The global temperature dropped by like 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Doesn't sound insane, but it's like, that's anywhere from 3 to 7 degrees off the normal Fahrenheit.
Okay.
That could be a difference if you have a winter that's already normally, it's at 21 degrees Fahrenheit with, whatever wind chill, and now it's going to be sitting around 10s, 8, 9 every day kind of thing. That maybe on the extreme end, a 3 Celsius drop. I don't know. It's not so much that it's again the farming, right? That the places where farming is already difficult enough, places in New England, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, upstate New York. I'm going to read you one anecdote, and this is it. Ready? On June 6th, snow falls in Albany, New York, and Dennisville, Maine. Done. I mean, what do you think? What does June snowfall do for crops and farming? That says it all, right? And that absolutely says it all. Canada completely runs out of bread and milk. In Quebec, they completely run out of bread and milk. Nova Scotians find themselves boiling foraged herbs for sustenance. Sarah Snell Bryant, this young woman of Cummington, Massachusetts, writing in her diary, quote, weather backward. Well said, Sarah. It was tweetable too, with just 150 characters, weather backward, end quote.
Their next thing for your diaries, food is terrible to follow.
Exactly. Yeah, some people are never satisfied, you know.
Wait, I'm sorry, the cows died, is that why we have no milk?
I assume so. I don't see the cause here, but yeah, I mean, the crops, the crop attrition rate is, 50, 60, 70% in some places, and the animals are going along with them. I mean, certainly. Here's a Massachusetts historian summing up the disaster. Because remember, it hit Atlantic Canada and the New England states the most severe. Severe frost occurred every month. June 7th and 8th, snow fell. It was so cold, crops were cut down, even freezing down to the roots. In the early autumn, when corn was in the milk, it was so thoroughly frozen, it never ripened, it was scarcely worth harvesting. Breadstuffs were scarce, prices high, poor class of people were often in straits for want of food. It must be remembered the granaries of the Great West had not then been opened to us by a railroad communication. That's amazing. So like an amazing point. Relief in the form of bringing in grain from the West to places less affected, perhaps. That's not a possibility. The Transcontinental Railroad is not built till 1869. This is 1816. This is long before, that, and people were obliged to rely on their own resources or upon others to their immediate locality. You have places in northwestern Pennsylvania where you have lakes and rivers and ponds frozen in August. So Marie, that's your answer how cold it is. I mean, that's just, I can say whatever I want about temperatures dropping by Celsius, whatever. If you have ponds frozen to skate on in July, okay, August and July.
So this just lasts like 1 year.
So actually, it really, the effects continue on for 2 or 3 years, I believe. It's 1 year specifically before like the fog lifts and things get better on the ground, but the fields have become barren, that kind of stuff. So the effects, just kind of like in the Great Famine in Russia in 1601, the immediate effects are that summer. The long-term effects last for a couple of years afterwards, and are felt down. I don't want to say generationally, that might be too long, but certainly felt for at least a decade, you can say, of like getting back to, pre-event like crop production. What happens when there's scarce crops? What happens to crop prices? Obviously, right? Price of oats, for example, rose from 12 cents per bushel to 92 cents per bushel. Okay, that's bad. That's an insane jump. That is insane. That is like 700% price increase. Okay. And in a weird way too, I mean, very beautiful, weird. People weren't thinking it was beautiful then, but just like in Hungary and Italy, because of this ash and this kind of atmospheric, again, stratospheric sulfate aerosol veil, you get blue snowfall in parts in Maryland, Hungary, and Italy. Now, life gives you lemons, right? I encourage all of you. What's very, very cool before we talk about the Catholic reaction, we're going to talk really about Pius and Napoleon. Because like I said, again, today, it's not normal. The Napoleonic disaster and the French Revolution disaster really overrides in a lot of ways the normal disaster of what today would be, head front page news, especially with climate alarmism. Like this would be like all we talk about. But the coolest thing that arises out of this are the paintings. Guys, go look up on your own. Years out of summer paintings, art. It is absolutely gorgeous. Some of these landscape paintings. And I've seen these, especially you want a guy? You want a person's name? JMW. He really took it too far. Turner. He's taking it too far, right? Come on, dude. JMW. Like if his name is just J Turner, like he has 3 dots. Come on. JMW Turner. This guy is considered the kind of beau ideal, par excellence artist of this time. JMW Turner. Chichester Canal. Painting from 1828, a great example. Just look up Turner paintings. I think Dominic's doing it right now, which is so epic and boss. Seriously, good job getting it. If you're doing that right now, you're an absolute legend. JMW Turner paintings. You'll see kind of like the beautiful, beautiful photographic representation, these crazy red, almost like everyone's seen pictures of an aurora borealis, kind of green and red stuff. So like the art that comes out of this, I mean, it's very, very beautiful. All right, guys, really quickly, before we talk about Napoleon in specificity, what is the Catholic response to this on the ground from the peasant? What do you think? What was the Catholic response to 536, the worst year to be alive? Catholics are good at this. Praise Jesus Christ. No man, unless he picks up his cross and follows me, can have eternal life. What are Catholics good at? Often resourceful Catholics. Think about Dark Age Catholics and all the barbarians. What do Catholics often do pretty well?
Fasting.
Fasting, certainly, yeah. No,
Sharing.
sure, okay. But it's kind of like the Catholic art of suffering, in a sense, of perseverance suffering.
Mhm.
That's one of the fruits of it's the fruit of the fifth mystery, glorious mystery, perseverance, the grace of perseverance. The crowning of Our Lady as Queen of Heaven and Earth, the grace of perseverance, and trust in her intercession. Perseverance. He who perseveres to the end will be saved. The average Catholic man and woman on the ground looks to the cross, if may God have granted them the grace to have that state of mind. This sucks. Our crops are dead. Our Lord and Savior died on the cross for me. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. Winston Churchill's famous quote: "If you find yourself in hell, keep going." That kind of attitude, like just push through, stiff upper lip, Britain during the Blitz, whatever. Fill in all the analogies you want. The average Catholic response isn't some kind of great writings and tracts and pieces and stuff. We're gonna have a lot of that when we get closer to modernity. We've had some of that in the past already. The Black Plague, we had a lot of kind of primary documents. The average man and woman on the ground, and Pius VII, the Pope himself, are not writing huge tracts in response to this. It's that silent, perseverant suffering. The crops failed. We'll try to feed your family. Don't give up. Pray and work. Be Benedictine monks or at Laborat. Do the best you can. Scrounge for food. Try to make it through. What would a Pope say today? I'm going to read you chapter 23 from Laudato Si. If Pius 23rd, excuse me, I literally took 23rd chapter and made a Pope out of that. Wow. There have only been 12 Pope Piuses. There's no Pius the 23rd. If you hear Pius 23rd, he's an anti-Pope. He's not a real Pope. He's a fake Pope. If Pius VII were to have taken a climatological approach to the summer of 1816, what would the Catholic response, remember Catholic response to disasters, this whole class, what might that look like? Well, Pope Francis's famous encyclical Laudato Si, is everyone here he's writing a sequel? There's a sequel to Laudato Si supposed to come out this fall. Who has heard that? Yeah. And of course, like everything Pope Francis does, to great fanfare and a lot of criticism, and right? Francis certainly has tons of detractors and supporters, and all. I don't have to explain it to anyone, right? So a lot of people are very excited about this, a lot of people are very upset, whatever. I have no comment. Pray for the Holy Father. Pope Francis writes this, and perhaps this would be what would be written today if we had a year of no summer. Here it is, reading from the 23rd chapter. No more me mumbling on, just verbatim from his text. The climate is a common good belonging to all, meant for all. At the global level, it is a complex system linked to many of the essential conditions for human life. A very solid scientific consensus indicates we are presently witnessing a disturbing warming of the climatic system. In recent decades, this warming has been accompanied by a constant rise in the sea level, and it would appear by an increase of extreme weather events. Extreme weather events. Humanity is called to recognize the need for changes of lifestyle, production, consumption in order to combat this warming, or at least the human causes which produce or aggravate. It is true there are other factors, such as volcanic activity, volcanic activity, variations of the Earth's orbit and axis, solar cycle, et cetera, greenhouse gases are released mainly as a result of human activity. As these gases build up in the atmosphere and all the way down, okay, I'm not going to tell you how I feel about global warming. I already told you that. Global warming is a hoax. Global warming is, Greta Thunberg's 100% right. It's the biggest crisis. It's an existential crisis. Like Biden says, I'm never going to tell you what to think. Al Gore is 100% correct. Al Gore is wrong. Your business. Certainly, that's what Francis probably would say, as he said about Laudato Si, to the year of 1816. So there's nothing we can do about this. He might make points that I made. Look to the cross, persevere. Try your best to reduce the factors that aggravate climatological problems. However, as he says here, there's some things that are outside your control. So we're back to ABC. Why does a volcano explode? Because that's life. I don't know, right? But Mary, did you have something?
Oh.
Okay. Okay. So no, always. I love, you guys know how much I love to talk, but I always prefer to hear from you. So if you ever have anything to say, please, just raise your hand or just jump in. So I was only asking because I wish you had something to say, but no problem. Yeah, that's probably what a Pope would say. This Pope for today, 1/1, is more concerned with Napoleon. He is more concerned with Napoleon. So what is the relationship of Napoleon to Pius VII, the Catholic Church? I think we already beat that dead horse pretty good. Thanks to Barb, and I mean this with total sincerity. Thank you. The bringing that up earlier, we kind of spent a lot of time on that. What is most important, what gets the most fame is the behavior of Napoleon during his coronation, when Pius VII comes to coronate him, Holy Roman Emperor. This gets the most interplay of like, look at their antagonisms. What happens? So 1,000 years earlier, in the year 800 AD, Charlemagne is crowned Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day by the Pope. Okay, Napoleon, now merging out of this mud and muck and chaos of the French Revolution, is going to be crowned Emperor of France. Anyone know what the difference is and why? Well, what is the hype around this event? What is the behavior I'm talking about?
Well, sounds like Napoleon did it all by himself.
Napoleon crowns himself. Napoleon crowns himself. Exactly. Napoleon literally says, unlike Charlemagne, who confesses the temporal subservience to spiritual authority, you are Peter. And Christ said that upon you, he will build his church, not me. I, as a Christian king, submit my temporal authority to your spiritual headship, so to speak. Point says, no, I'm the king. I'm the boss. You work for me or whatever. So we're equals. Like it's something about the Concordat of Worms going back to the year 1122 and the investiture crisis and like who gets to appoint bishops and stuff. This is this long simmering thing. This is no longer 1,000 years earlier, sword and scepter, and the Vatican I should just shut up right now because there's always rivalry between the popes and the kings. There's never like, oh, they're best friends. But there always was at least this kind of, implied, even wink, wink. Yeah, I as a secular king, being a Christian king, in trying to promote, as very recently, Pope St. Pius X, the 20th century Pope, talked about the social kingship of Christ. I am subservient to the papal authority. Napoleon's like, I'm subservient to nobody. So we hate him, right, as Catholics. Well, again, it's this kind of like, that's this interesting thing, because again, more famously than all that was the Concordat of 1801. And at this point, the church really is reeling in Europe. I said at the Spirit and Life, for anyone who attended, and shame on you, for those who did not attend, shame on you, how dare you. I said at the Spirit and Life, I said that, the Protestant Reformation was, sorry to offend anyone, a looting operation, especially in England. These English lords are hugely in debt, and they look around and they say the church owns all the land. Well, why does the church own all the land? Because they stole it from someone? No, because of ora et labora. The church shows up, Augustine of Canterbury, these evangelists, and they teach people how to farm. And they have the land. Before that, it was marshy swampland, nothing. People running around in the forest, I don't know, doing whatever. The church is the rightful owner, and the people in England are like, we have no theological problems whatsoever. Anglicans in some ways too. Anglican services, right? So sadly, not in communion with Rome at all. Epic fail. They're beautiful. They're so Catholic. They're so much for tradition, and they love Our Lady and all this kind of stuff because there was no theological dispute. They're just like, let's loot the land. Henry VIII, it was pure libido, right? I'm done with Catherine of Aragon. She's old news. I want Anne Boleyn. So it was totally just a personal kind of like giving into lust. And the English guys are like, we're not theologically opposed to Rome, but if we just kick out the church, we get to steal their land, right? So this is happening all throughout Europe, including it becomes a looting operation pretty quickly in the place where there was this supposed theological justification of the selling of indulgences with Luther. In Germany already, you have this thing called the Peace of Luneville, 1801, when a lot of church property in the Holy Roman Empire, that Napoleon ends. Good for them. You guys secularized church property, your empire is over. Good. You got exactly what you deserve. The Holy Roman Empire secularizes, you could say laicizes, takes away from church authority a lot of this property. The Pope is really a lot of places, so he's very, very happy that the Concordat of 1801 is signed with Napoleon. In fact, later on, when he advocates for Napoleon to get better treatment in exile, you'd say a lot of it comes from here. Now, what is the Concordat of 1801? Signed July 15th, 1801 in Paris. The aim was a national, because this time the French revolutionaries are extraordinary nationalists, right? The Marseillaise idea of like, we will, until our enemies' blood is like, watering the furrows of our land, everything for liberty, fraternity, equality. We're just, citizen one, citizen two. this very nationalistic, atheistic, secular project. In some ways, all of modern secularism is kind of comes from 1789. Okay, how do we reconcile that new sad reality with France as the eldest daughter of the church, the most Catholic country on earth, arguably, with competition only like Ireland and whatever. This Concordat seeks to do that. It solidifies the Roman Catholic Church as the majority church in France. Anyone know when the laicite law comes into law in France? Laicite just means total secularism. There's a law that's still in the books in France. They quote back to this. What year? Anyone know? 1905. But good. That's good enough. You're kind of like, yeah, whatever. I agree with you. Whatever. You're 1 year, that's perfectly 100% correct. At that point, if you're within a decade, it's like good enough, right? And this law of 1905 is denounced by Pius X. Pius is from 1903 to 14. Until that time, in post-revolutionary France, guys, post-revolutionary France, they would still sign law agreements in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. There is a crucifix in like law rooms every school in France. So is Napoleon a good or bad guy? Maybe let's work on that canonization process, right? I mean, thank you, Napoleon. The guys before him are killing people, installing the goddess of reason, this awful blasphemous idolatry in Notre Dame. He's bringing back normalcy in some ways. It resolves, some people hope at least, the hostility of devout French Catholics in the revolutionary state. What is the hot point for Catholicism versus for Catholic France versus revolutionary France in the revolutionary era? The Vendée, exactly. The Vendée massacre. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous Gulag Archipelago Nobel Prize winner, ticks off the French intellectuals by not meeting with them and going to the Vendée when he goes to France, which is so based and so awesome. Napoleon allows Catholic clergy to return from exile, restores power to the papacy, balances church-state relations. But Napoleon, of course, is like, I crown myself. The church-state relations are balanced in his favor in some ways, etc. So is Napoleon a bad or good guy? I don't know. I mean, you tell me. Is he a bad or good guy? Behold history. Behold the beauty of history. And for today's class, the year of 1816, the year that a summer of which we gave a lot of good information, and thank you for all your great comments as always, really is overshadowed by a larger disaster. Even if you're like, no, Gratian, I'm dead serious. Let's canonize Napoleon. I think he's actually awesome. Even if you take the super pro-Napoleon phase, he's still a disaster. As like a tornado is a disaster. He runs roughshod over Europe. Even if it's for the good, it's disastrous, and it changes everything in Europe. So Pius, I'm so impressed, Barb, that you knew the Pope at that time. It's so hard. I mean, really, most Catholics' knowledge of the Pope is like Francis now, Benedict, John Paul II, remember him. I have no idea who came before JP2. That's like most Catholics, right? The fact that you knew it was Pius VII is just, I mean, amazing. He doesn't issue a lot of stuff on the climate, not only because people don't care about the climate then like they do now. The whole climate question, CO2, levels and all that is post-industrial revolution, mid-19th century phenomenon anyways, the whole Manchester factory stuff, blah, 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 so on and so forth. It's not just that. It's just that it begs this question, this mathematical formula, all of you so rudely said you hate. And then you said it doesn't make sense. How dare you? Maybe you've noticed too, I say how dare you a lot. I love that saying so much because it is so unbelievably school marmish. Like to say it seriously, like to have a librarian come in and like, just imagine her like scolding people. How dare you? How dare you speak loud? Just so like down to the core of like cringe. You're just like electrocuted by cringe. So I love that. I love that saying. I love the saying, how dare you? Hope I can pull it off one day, like with a straight face. Let me try it. Ready? Barb, how dare you? I can't. I almost start smiling right away.
I think Greta Thunberg wants to say that.
Greta, yeah, exactly. And when Greta Thunberg like went on her epic rant in 2019, she was like, "How dare you?" Right? She says, "How dare you?" to the people who are like ruining her future. It was just, I'm sorry. It's like Greta Thunberg is the greatest figure of our time, or she's an absolute joke. I'm not gonna know how to feel about her. She's this misguided, stupid little girl, or she's chain Joan of Arc. However you feel about her, your business. But it's like that was so embarrassing. Using "how dare you" is really embarrassing. It's not good. Oh, now they're put in their place. How dare you? Now, how dare you? Right? How dare I? Now I'm chastised. So anyways, yeah, that's all I have. Anyone have anything for me? Come Wednesday, we have our cholera outbreak. Barb, I probably will forget. I have to admit to you, I'm serious.
Cholera outbreak on Wednesday.
Yeah, no, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Really God forbid.
Not on my to-do
We will
list.
talk, indeed. Well, you're wise men, both of you, but we'll talk about the great cholera outbreak of London of the mid-19th century. Barb, I'm not joking when I say I probably forget, like, haha. I sincerely mean that. I probably will forget because it's not in my notes, but I'll try to make passing note on the Irish potato famine because that fits perfectly appropriately with the time. It's about the same time, and talk about a Catholic disaster. And I wanted to stay away from a lot of like I'm not doing any wars really. Well, I do the First World War, but only because of its connection to the Spanish flu. But I try to stay away, generally speaking, from that. But it's like Irish potato famine fits perfectly. It's almost like it should be on the list. So I'll try to remember to include that. Anyone have anything else? If not, then get out of here. See you Wednesday. Goodbye.
Tell you what